Recently, I came across a TikTok that said, when I consider hitting up a hottie to come chill, then I remember the quote, you only crave male validation when you want to abandon your creativity, while this girl was running back and forth from her room to the living room with a keyboard, with a guitar, with a stack of books, etc. And while this was hilarious and cute and relatable, I could not leave it at that, so we are deep diving it. Bitch, what I was trying to say is this situation got me so wet and so dry at the same time. Exactly.
What's up, bitches? Welcome back to another episode of So Wet, So Dry. I'm one of your hosts, Autumn. Like the season, I'm remembering the feeling of getting lost in a book again, and I love that, and I work in entertainment.
And I'm your other host, Fiji, like the island, like the water. I feel like my brain is screaming at me right now, and I work in social media and marketing. So like I said, guys, I came across this TikTok from the creator BuBien. And then from this TikTok, it led to a bunch of micro trends of people posting TikToks like this one, where it's the words over different pieces of art, saying you only start to crave male validation when you abandon your creativity. So I thought this phrase, you only start to crave male validation when you abandon your creativity, was really interesting. And I was like, is it from a book? Is it from a movie? Like, where is it from? I was trying to find it everywhere on the internet. The only thing that I could find, the earliest thing besides the trend starting from this TikTok, was a thread post from 2024 from a creator called That's So Drea. And they said, you only start seeking male validation when you abandon your creativity. So that's the closest thing I could find. But the topic of going boy sober, decentering men for B, and generally denouncing our need for male validation has been like super trending right now. And then also TikToks that are comparing the male and female gaze. So a lot of makeup trends, outfit trends, just general advice to decenter men from your own brain. Here's some TikToks like those.
Don't look at me with those eyes.
What eyes?
This is my anti-hit on outfit. This is the outfit I wear to make sure you motherfuckers leave me alone. With the combat boots. Like, I'll fuck your ass. Bitch, fuck me. Yo, shit. Like, right here, look.
People have also been critiquing celebrities like Sydney Sweeney, saying that they perform for the male gaze, which often ends up just being a shit ton more misogyny. But this is a huge conversation, and we've talked about it in a lot of our other episodes. But in this episode, I want to focus on the sort of desire for male validation and how this affects our creativity and our ability to speak our truth. So pretty much, we're going to see if this statement is true or facts, or if we need to debunk it. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the end of the episode where we wrap up with what we're wet, dry, and still confused about the topic, because it is okay to still be confused. But let's get into it, and we're gonna start with some polls that we asked our audience. So first, we asked you guys, do you feel more creative when you're single? And 68% of you guys said yes, and only 32% said no. And then we also asked you guys, do you think your desire for male validation causes you to abandon your creativity? So we're coming right out with the fucking question. And only 17% of you guys said yes, 30% said sometimes, and 53% said no.
So for the first poll, do you feel more creative when you're single? Like, honestly, I feel like for me, when I'm in relationships, like my creativity is really it's a lot more there than it is when I'm single.
Really?
I do, because I just feel like through a lot of my relationships, and like we've just done a lot of like photography. Like one of my first partners, who was a woman, like she liked to do photography, but she was like insecure about it, and I was like, you can practice on me whenever. And then we would like do stuff together, and like even, I don't know, like I feel like love like really inspires me. Like I feel like it's really corny, and honestly I haven't been in a relationship in a minute, but like from what I can remember, I feel like I was a lot more inspired and creative, and like I had someone to like back me up and like validate me, like you're awesome, like you can do this, whatever. So I feel like for me, honestly, like when I'm single, like I'm just kind of like, I don't know, dude. Like I do feel like being alone and like having more time for myself, like absolutely can inspire some bursts of creativity, but overall, I would say I'm more creative when I'm in love with someone, even if we're not together. Like, that feeds me.
Okay, I feel that. But I want to ask a follow-up question with that because you've had mostly relationships with women. So 2-part question. 1, do you think it's because you're in a relationship with a woman versus a man? And 2, do you feel like you being more creative has anything to do with like the validation that you're getting from your partner? Versus when you're single, you don't have validation from like another person kind of thing.
Right. Yes. I feel like for the first question, like I honestly, like, so when I've been in mostly relationships with women, 1 relationship with a man. And when I was with him, like, we like made videos together and like I would like dress up in my like OnlyFans outfits and wigs and like we would go out and he would take pictures of me in different locations and like I honestly did feel like we were like creating art together, but at the same time like I would be nervous to like post maybe like a more artsy type photo because like, oh, what would he think of that kind of thing? Like, and I think he would have loved it, but it was like that male validation, like block. Like I was just like, I don't know if he's going to accept like all of me. But I felt that way with my female or not female, but women partners identifying too. So I think it's just kind of a mix, but yeah, I feel like definitely I'm more creative because I'm getting that validation from my partner as well. Like sometimes I'm like, I need someone to do that because maybe I don't believe in myself because creativity to me, like I think about putting your art out there and like expressing yourself in ways that like mainstream society doesn't really fuck with even maybe. That's what I think about it, but creativity is obviously a broad term, you know? It's like I can draw a picture whenever maybe, but can I draw like a picture that's like raw emotions like when I'm single versus relationship? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it's kind of a combination because sometimes in relationships, like I feel you on the like taking pictures, like outfits, like one of my exes, we created like a lot of music together, even though I'm not really like a music artist, but like he inspired me to like just try different types of things. And like when you're with a person, like it's fun to collaborate together. But I feel like, and it depends on how you define creativity, right? Because when I think about like myself and the type of art and creativity that I really want to express, when I've been in relationships, I feel like I haven't always been able to do that because a lot of it ties very closely to like my really inner deep feelings, my sexuality, and like myself. Like it sounds so corny, but like taking pictures of yourself, and I know you did with your ex, like for OnlyFans, and he was like supportive of that and everything. But I've had like men that I've dated that are like, why are you posting yourself? Like you want validation sort of thing. Or like even like talking like on the podcast or something like that, like about our days as strippers or past relationships that I've been in, which I consider creativity. It's like using our voice. It's telling our truth.
Absolutely.
It's feminism, like connecting with other audiences. But like, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like sometimes in relationships with men, it's like.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, because even like with my ex-boyfriend, I'm like, yeah, he was for it because he was like low-key exploiting me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to, but like he was like, let's make this money.
And
like,
was it for the male? Like, it's a different type of thing.
It was.
And that's the problem that I think I've had with like male partners that I've been with too, is that they think it's for the male gaze when it's not. Like, say I take like an artistic picture of like an outfit with my body showing or like something, but it's like I want like women to fuck, or it doesn't even matter. No, but I'm not posting it because I want someone to fuck me.
Right. It literally doesn't even need to be women. I'm doing it for like spectators at a museum to come in, interact with my photo, and then leave. Do not touch the art. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just a pedestrian and they don't have a gender. Like, I feel you, bro. And it's like, I feel like I need to stop saying bro so much. It kind of gives me the ick sometimes.
I like it.
Okay, but I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like creativity and art is different to everyone, but I do feel you because I honestly feel like the art I really want to do, maybe I can't do it when I'm single because like I'm still not like accepting like what my purpose should be and like what I should be doing, you know? Like,
Oh, yeah, or you don't like, because I know the relationship that I'm talking about, like with the partner that like we did a bunch of creative stuff. Like I do feel like I realized I have low self-worth in certain senses because I
Right.
need someone else to see the potential in me
Yes.
to be able to like go
Yes.
after it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Because-
Versus like alone, you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not worth that. Like, who am
I know. And even when it comes to sex work, I was like, I can't have an OnlyFans and make thousands of dollars. Like, I don't look like those girls with like their bodies done, whatever. And like the way that he was like making me feel like I was a fucking star and like I can make money in so many other ways beyond sex work and all these things. Like it literally like healed a part of me.
Yeah.
And it's because of like he was a man. Because I've had plenty of women believe
it's the
in me.
validation from men.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, and it comes back to daddy issues too. Like he doesn't know the real me. So like, therefore he can't see my full potential. But like my boyfriend at the time, like it healed a part of me, but like in a weird way, in like a male gaze way. But yes, it's like you need someone to see that potential where you're like, okay, like someone else sees it. Like I'll go for it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of like the next question too, where it's like pretty much the whole episode and we're going to break it down so much deeper. But like, do you think your desire for male validation causes you to abandon your creativity? And most of you guys said no, but like it's almost 50-50 when we look at yes and sometimes. I think I put sometimes because I'm thinking about those moments where it's like, say I have a free Tuesday night and I could paint and be by myself or take TikToks or like work on the podcast or do something else, but I choose to like go out with a random man that hit me up that I know I'm not even really into, but like I feel like if I which getting dressed, doing your makeup, that is a creative act and creative form and I like to do that. But like you're almost just like you feel like this one thing would fulfill you, but you're chasing the male validation instead when like that's a more empty sort of fulfillment kind of thing.
And that's so real. And like honestly, it's like rather than being like down on yourself, like it's a beautiful thing to pinpoint. Like what could I actually, like, you know, like how that's interfering with like your actions and your life. And I don't know. I feel like for me, like it's a deep question.
It's a deep question.
Your desire for male validation causes you to abandon your creativity. Like the only thing I can think of, and I feel like this is surface level, like I want to dig deeper, but like I do feel like when it comes to men, like I do get like embarrassed easily and like not in a kinky way. Yeah. So it's like abandoning my creativity, like maybe in the past, like how I dressed or like how I presented myself because I knew men would be there. It's like, I'm just going to like conform. Yes. Like I feel like I did that my whole like fucking like middle school through high school. Like that was me. And then I went to college and was like, okay, wait. And like honestly, I was gonna say like
gay and women too.
But even like because I was like exploring queerness in high school too, and it's like even with that, like even if I was a lesbian, like it still affects you. Like you know what I mean? Like it's still like, and I like have to remember that because you feel so invincible like as a queer person, like from validation. Like I felt that before. Like why the fuck? Like no, like blah blah blah. Obviously now I'm bisexual, so it's different, but I still like, you're not invincible from it. Like you have to like work it out.
Yeah, because male validation is kind of what rules the capitalistic like job world and all of that. Like I think about all the times where it's like I choose to dress a different way, like cover my body more or something like that because I'm like anticipating how men are going to see me when I leave the house, like be more professional and like all of that stuff. And also like for me, it's like your voice because I feel like I am a very like loud, be myself, talk about sex, talk about all that open stuff, but around men. And even when men engage in the podcast, sometimes I have held myself back from posting certain things on my story or I'm nervous on TikTok and then I have to constantly remind myself because I'm like, oh my God, guys are going to think I'm a slut or not want to fuck with me or something like that. But the whole point of what we're doing is to be like against that and validate other women and like all of that. But you still have the like idea of like you taking this risk against like the common male view is going to make you like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. And you know what's so crazy about the whole like guys are going to see how you are and then you're a slut. They won't want to fuck you. Like, honestly, like I didn't really learn that until my first relationship with the man when I was like 22 or whatever. Yeah. Like that shit is crazy because that was like such an awakening. Like he said to me, like, we hooked up like in this like slutty way at like 4 a.m. Like, what did you think was
Then
going
he
to
didn't
happen?
respect you anymore. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so that one event, like, you know what I mean? Like, that is a crazy fucking thing. But like, yeah, I honestly, like, I do feel like I'm at a point where like I don't really give a fuck. Like,
yes,
you know,
agreed.
but
yeah.
it used to be so much worse, and it still pops up. Like, catch me on a bad day, I might cry about it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we're not invincible. Like, we feel
Right.
that
It's
shit.
like
And
waves.
yeah, and we're gonna get into like how deep the male gaze and this like craving for male validation, how we can't
Everywhere
escape it
we
because
look,
it's societal. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So next I want us to talk a little bit about why we crave male validation. But first, like I said in the beginning, there's this broader conversation going on amongst like YouTubers, TikTokers, feminists, or people that think they're feminists, etc. Part of it is good, part of it is not so good, whatever, about male validation and like the harms of it. And sometimes we take it too far and sometimes we don't. But I have this one TikTok. We're going to play it in 2x speed because it's rather long.
Okay.
But she's talking about when male-centered women, I think is a common term right now. The idea of prioritizing male validation over friendship. So we're going to watch that.
Huge one.
Yep.
When will you guys realize that women that are fully obsessed with men are shit friends? They're going to do you dirty. They're going to put you in terrible situations for male validation. And they're genuinely just not great girlfriends. They have no morals when it comes to friendship. They don't care about, like, girl code. Their entire life and, like, their whole goals are just set on getting male validation and getting male attention and just being with a man constantly. I'm bringing this up because I've had previous friendships that I had to cut off because of this. But also, a little quick story time. So my friend last night went out with this girl who we both know, but I've just kind of distanced myself because at this point I can quickly see what type of woman you are. And as soon as I, like, notice that weird obsession with men, I don't even bother. I'm good. But anyways, she's a little more forgiving, I guess. I don't really know, but she didn't really care for that. So she stayed friends with her. And last night, those two girls decided to go out together, right? Just the two of them, mind you, two. So if you leave with two, you come back with two, right? Of course, I already kind of figured this would happen, and I told the girl, but she was just like, oh, but she's nice, like that. And I was like, okay, it's okay. I'm not trying to start a hate train. I'm just letting you know, like, that's the type of vibe I'm getting. But my friend decided to stay friends with her, right? So they go out together last night, just the two of them, and at 2 a.m. I'm getting a call, and my friend's crying, and she's like, you will not believe what this girl did to me. You will not believe the jokes she cracked about me in front of men. You will not believe all this shit she did, and now I'm Ubering home by myself because she left with one of the guys. Yeah. So is it not crazy? I'm not even on the I told you so type of energy. It's just like, I knew it. I literally know when women are weirdly obsessed with men and they put their friends in weird situations and they don't even consider you a friend. They just consider you like a little pawn that they can just play around with just for Joseph to really like her, I guess. I don't know. It's so stupid. I really don't understand it. This is why I say be selective with your friends and understand when girls have zero goals other than men. When they call you, all they're talking about is their men issues. These women are genuinely insane. Like, they need help. They need help. At this grown ass age of 20 years old, and this is the shit you're on. You have no goals. You have no job. You literally just all you care about is men. So moral of the story is, as a woman, I feel like you should be selective with people that you're friends with already, but especially be selective with girls that just revolve their entire world around men. Girls that literally will put you in uncomfortable or even dangerous situations, in this case for men. And now my friend's heartbroken because she's like, how could you do that to me? Like, how could she do that to me? And I'm just like, because that's all they care about is getting something. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I promise you it's not worth it. And if you're like me and you're like, oh, I can just help this person. Like, if they find self-love and they have standard, like, I'm sure they'll be good. Like, you can try and help them. It's not gonna work, babe. You're wasting your breath because they'll come to you for advice about a man. You'll give them advice. You'll tell them, stand up, girl. Like, that man is insane. Because it's not like they're with good men either. These men will do them dirty as hell and they'll still be with that man. But then they'll come to you for advice. You'll give them advice. You'll give them fantastic advice. They'll go to the opposite and then come crying to you again about how they should listen to you. It's genuinely the most exhausting shit ever. And if you know, you know. Like, I know it may sound like, oh, like maybe I'm the bad friend and I'm not there for them, but you guys, there's no helping. There's no helping. You really just they have to figure that shit out themselves. But until then, don't waste your breath. Don't be friends with those type of girls because they will do you dirty and they'll put you in crazy ass situations like the one that my friend was in last night. And also, like, I'm the type of girl that like wants to like do shit with my friends. Like, I want to start a business. I want to like go to networking events with you. I want to apply for jobs together. I want to help practice interviewing each other. They're not about doing anything career related. They're not about literally doing anything that does not revolve around men or going out. Or both. There's just no point in being friends with a person like that. They only bring you down and they only stress you out and they only put you in shit situations. This is my PSA for women that are like that. Please work on your fucking self and have some damn decorum and standard. Jeez, it's exhausting to have a friend like that. Genuinely.
Okay, so first off, we talk a little bit more about this in a lot of different episodes, but in our ins and outs episode, we talked about like girls a little bit and like pick-me's, and like Autumn and I have like very different ideas on certain aspects of this, and we are great friends who prioritize each other. But a couple things I want to take away from this is like, obviously, like, I do think that there is a thing where you're prioritizing men over your friends and like it can get to be too much. And like, I do think this situation is like real. Like, this is fucked up. It's fucked up to leave your friend like that to go with another guy, like whatever. Yeah. Like, but a couple things that stuck out to me is like, one, she's saying like at the grown age of 20 years old. Like, I'm like, girl, you are not grown at 20 years old. You are very much a child, and those are the years you're gonna fuck up and accidentally put men first. And maybe you need to during those years before you figure it out. I know I definitely fucking did before I figured shit out later. And then the other thing is that like, again, like she says like, oh, like I want to friends that I can network with, start a business with, do all this stuff. And like, you're just putting men first and like, whatever. And like in friendship dynamics, like this stuff, like it makes sense. Like, I'm not making excuses for the male-centered friend, but I also like want us to recognize the ways that this kind of narrative can just be inherently more misogynistic. And I'm going to talk about it in relation to Carrie Bradshaw in a little bit too. But do you have anything to say about
because
it?
I think like to a degree, like, like when we're like born and like we grow up and like we're little, like we're conditioned to like be male centered, like as women, like that's, and it's like for someone to be like, oh my God, like that's all they care about, like this is all they like think about. It's just like that person had to actively unlearn that at one point. So it's like this person just clearly hasn't unlearned it yet. But I agree, it's a really shitty situation. And like there is like, when you say like a woman that like puts men first and like stabs her best friend in the back, like there is like a stereotypical like woman I'm like thinking of in my head. And like I can think about moments in my life where I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But I just think once again, like there's a bigger problem. And if you like zoom out on your like reality of ants, like fighting as women and like doing all these things, like feelings are real and it's valid to be like fucked up over that. Like you fucking hurt me by that.
Yeah.
You made me feel like,
or put me in danger.
X,
or
Y, and
something
Z.
like that.
Yes. But I think it's just important to like zoom out and like realize that it's like, nah, this girl just needs to unlearn that shit. And maybe she needs to lose all her friends in order for that to happen.
Right, exactly. You don't need to enable the behavior. Like someone needs to learn from that they can't just
And
like
be
treat
held
their friends-
accountable. Like,
and be held accountable. But like when we're talking about it in the context of like patriarchy, which of course we're going to, and like internalized misogyny, all of that, I think we need to be a little bit careful about not reinforcing patriarchy.
Yeah.
But that is showing up more. Again, that's just like two friends dynamics, different than when we talk about the broader culture. So another thing that's happening right now in terms of
wait, actually. And the other thing that's real quick stood out to me too is like the way she was like I'm someone that like wants to make businesses with my friends. I'm like, what? So they can't be like
It's putting
entrepreneurial like I wish I spoke in Spanish as well. Like what? That's crazy.
Exactly. It's the like I'm better than you because I don't seek male validation and I don't center men.
Right.
And, like that kind of like one-upping each other, like the new like pick. It's almost like you're pick-meing each other. Like you're both out pick-meing.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
You know
that clicked for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we get to Carrie Bradshaw, so I have this article from Days Digital that I'm not going to read really talk about the whole article, but I want to summarize it for you guys because this is a bigger conversation on YouTube. I actually watched a couple YouTube videos about it too. I had rewatched Sex and the City a few years ago, but now it's on Netflix, so everybody is fucking rewatching it.
Right, I rewatched it a few years ago too.
Yeah, and there's a big Carrie hate train right now, which like I'm not gonna lie to you, like what is her full name? The actress?
Like her name
Carrie
in the
Bradshaw?
show?
No, her real name. Sarah Jessica Parker. Sarah
There we
Jessica
go.
Parker,
Okay,
is not
Fiji.
like my favorite person. Like if we're talking about Sex and the City characters, I like Samantha the most. But like it's a show, guys. Let's remember it's a fucking show. And like Carrie Bradshaw is the main character. So like she is the person that has the column where she writes about sex and relationships and we're following her life. And so obviously the friends are going to be secondary characters, whatever. But people are hating on Carrie because of her like incredibly annoying obsession with Mr. Big and how she prioritizes him and she's stuck in this awful on and off situationship and sometimes she does her friends dirty and all of this stuff. And then again, they go even further and they're like, well, she has a sex and relationships column. So obviously all she cares about is male validation, which again, guys, like if we're talking about creativity, like she's being creative. Like I don't love Carrie Bradshaw, but like I think she's important in the context of like how we see like women operating in the city with friendships and like with male partners, like whatever. So this article is all about like, do you have a Carrie complex and how to stop looking for male validation, whatever. But I think it's a little ick and we all need to relax a little bit. But one quote that I did like from the article that it talked about, they talked about this book called She Found It at the Movies, Women Writers on Sex, Desire, and Cinema. And it says, patriarchy makes us wish we were missed, visible but undefined, present but not too intrusive, gently floating on the periphery. And I thought that was like really poetic and really real. And like, I think that's kind of what like, I mean, Carrie's battling with in Sex and the City, but we all are. Like, it makes me think of like the mysterious girl thing and like the like wanting to just be something people can project onto.
Right. Yeah, because
you know?
you have to stand out to be noticed. But if you stand out too much, like that is very, very bad in the mindset of patriarchy. And like even with male validation, it's like, guys want girls that like, you know, it's like they sort of blend in, but also they don't at the same time. Like, and yeah, I don't know. It's just
and
insane.
they're flexible to like their needs. Yeah.
I really like that quote a lot.
So like with that quote, I want to ask the discussion question: how does this like flattening of ourselves limit our creativity? And we kind of already talked about it a little bit. Like for me, a lot of it has to do with my sexuality and like men seeing me as being a slut or wanting like them perceiving me wanting male validation when that's not really what I'm doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I think that's it for me, but
I just feel like for me, like as a kid, like I was like kind of like weird and like I got made fun of. And then like all of a sudden in 7th grade, like there was like a switch. Like people noticed I had a big ass and I started hanging out with like the popular crowd.
yep.
But like
Literally saying, bro.
before that, like I was like made fun of for what I would wear. Like the popular girls would like throw like paper at me. Like it was like, and I feel like my whole thing with like male validation is just like I don't want to be too weird. Like I feel like I need to be normal. But like my weirdness is very much what like inspires me to create and like gives me ideas to like look a certain way or write a certain something or whatever, like, or do this. Like our weirdness shines on this because we are like, you know, we have
ourselves
different opinions and stuff like that. So yeah, and ourselves, like we're personalities, which is really weird, but that we're being perceived and all that. But like it's artistic to me. So I feel like that's where it comes from. It's like I feel like I need to flatten myself and like fit in and like way less now. I feel like I've come so far, but like I'd be lying if I said I still didn't feel it a little bit. Like I still am afraid to like wear certain things that like people probably think is weird, but to me it looks good. And like I've always felt that way. Like I just remember like being in my bedroom as a little girl, like trying different things on. My mom's like hyping me up. And I would just like get made fun of because now looking back, I'm like, yeah, that outfit was crazy. But like I liked it.
Yeah.
And like whatever. Like I had 2 moms. Like my style was definite. Like anyways. So I just feel like that's what it is for me.
And then just to wrap up that section, I saw another thread. I don't know what it was. With this episode in threads, but someone else had threaded like that same quote, and someone replied and said, "That's deep. Seeking validation can be a way of second guessing yourself, almost like asking for permission to hold back. But creativity thrives in authenticity, not approval. When you trust your vision and let go of the need for outside confirmation, you stay true to what makes your work unique. Validation feels good, but creating from within hits different. Don't abandon that for anyone." And the girl with the original thread responded and said, "Creativity thrives in authenticity, not approval." Bars, which honestly, like that was my favorite part too. Yeah. Because like, exactly, like I feel like when you create, like when you're not thinking of anyone else's eyes, anyone else's perception, nothing, and you just like create, honestly, that's usually what sticks with people the most. Like,
right. And
because it's real, it's not trying too hard. Like,
and so it's like to that point too, it's like for argument's sake, and I don't necessarily believe this, but maybe your creativity, like if you have not unlearned your male validation for others, like maybe you can only be in your true creativity when you are single because you don't have anyone, like whatever, like maybe you just need to zone out and like really find yourself. Like, because I feel like that, like I feel like to an extent, even the art I made with my partners in the past, like was I holding back to a certain degree? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So I do feel like, honestly, like, I mean, yeah, I love all of that. And I do feel like being creative, like while you're single, like looking at relationships through like a monogamous, like capitalistic lens, it's like maybe that's the only way. Because I do feel like healthy relationships are like so hard right now.
Yeah.
For like,
yeah.
so, like,
I feel like also like for me, it's like oddly this like perception thing. Like, you know how people were talking about even like with TikTok, like how so many people were able to be their like true selves on TikTok because a lot of people didn't have like people they know who followed them. It was like
which is so
random audiences. Like I feel like I have this thing sometimes like with like either guys or even like friends or like people that work colleagues that I meet, like if I know what I think their perception of me is, I just like, and I know that that's like safe and comfortable. I'm like, okay, like I don't want to expose the other parts of myself to them because that's too vulnerable. So let me just stay in this lane.
Dude, all I do is like hyper focus on like hiding things.
Yes,
like,
yes,
from like depending on like who I'm talking to. And like when people like ask me like an invasive question or like in a question where they're like they really want to get to know me, whatever, I kind of like freak out. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, what? Well, you can't ask me that
because
yet.
I think it's also I was noticing that
like, no,
recently because I went to like my corporate 9 to 5 like dinner or whatever, and like they found out about the podcast. Like, I don't know. They don't know the name of it. They don't have the link, but in case you guys are listening, hey.
Yeah, no, dude.
But
do
it
not
was like
that. No one's listening.
Yeah. No, I don't want anyone to listen. But like it freaks me out because it's like, and I'm like, okay, it's so weird that I can like fully be myself on this podcast with you, my best friend, that we're putting on the internet. But like
I
in
like
other
forget
spaces,
that we do that because
but like in other spaces of like work or like when you're on a date with someone and the potential of like a further relationship or whatever, like you're also anticipating like what's okay in that environment and like what's gonna not only like hurt their feelings but make them uncomfortable or question their beliefs. And I feel like us as people have a lot of shit that makes people question or is just very like,
or is like mean to us and getting hate comments that were damaged property.
Exactly. And that's why like that's why I'm weird about the podcast with people at work. Obviously I don't want to be fucking sexualized. Because I'm like, yeah. But same with people I'm dating. Like I've had people that I've been talking to like be like, oh, let me listen to the podcast. And I'm like, I just talked about like 3
and honestly, like in some of my like recent shit, like I didn't even feel like I could be myself because I knew they would be listening. So I was like, but that's what I'm like thinking about, like art as a concept, like art with an audience, art without one. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like we do have an audience, but like we're not doing it live. So it's like we can just like, oh, that's a tomorrow problem if people hate it or whatever. But it's like so, like just being perceived and like, yeah, oh my God, that's crazy.
Being perceived and what gaze, which is what we're going to get into next, guys. We're going to talk about the male gaze first. We've got 3 different gazes that we're going to go into, but the male gaze first. And there's so much out there about the male gaze, but I just went over to good old Wikipedia. I know people hate on YouTube video essayists that use Wikipedia, but I'm sorry, this is the best summary that I can find.
Someone put their hard-earned work into this summary.
Into this. So we are going with this, and then I have a couple other sources, but I am going to go over. So the male gaze is from feminist theory, and it is the act of depicting women in the world in the visual arts and in literature from a masculine, heterosexual perspective. And I would add white. I would generally say white too. There is like other, but like when we think about in the art that we're going to look at, it's usually white, heterosexual, masculine. And it represents women generally as sexual objects for the pleasure of the heterosexual male viewer. And again, guys, this is usually in art. So we're talking about creativity. We're talking about performance. Who is the gaze? It is the man. And the concept was first articulated by the British feminist film theorist Laura Mulvey in her 1975 essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema.
Wait, I'm so smart. I know what that is. Do you know what that is?
Okay.
No, that
you were like, in VMA.
Yeah,
college,
I think so we learned this in college.
Yes, yeah, because it has a lot to do with film.
Bro, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so
I know who that
is her essay, and her theory draws on historical precedents such as the depiction of women in European oil paintings from the Renaissance period, where female form was often idolized and presented from a voyeuristic male perspective. And we're gonna look at some of that art in a little bit. But the art historian John Berger, in his work Ways of Seeing, which I remember reading this in an art class in college, he highlighted how traditional Western art positioned women as subjects of male viewers' gaze, reinforcing a patriarchal visual narrative. So even though he's a guy, he's clocking it. He's saying this is happening.
Nice.
And in the visual and aesthetic presentations of narrative cinema, the male gaze has 3 perspectives. that of the man behind the camera, that of the male characters within the film cinematic representation, and that of the spectator gazing at the image. So you have to think of like, woman is being filmed, it's the man behind the thing, it's the man that's in the film looking at her, and then also the audience at home watching her.
Yes.
So, and that is really what it feels like to be a woman. Like, I know for me, like, again, when you talk about 7th grade, like getting popular, getting an ass, like that's really the time period when it happened, when I started to be like,
because we're aligned,
like,
bitch. We were like
bro,
stars.
Like the stars were meant to align, but it's like you go out into the world and you just constantly feel men's eyes on you, or you know what they're gonna say. Like, I know what men are gonna say every time I say my name is Fiji, and it's like a lot about me is sexual. Like, obviously my Instagram's, again, I say this all the time, guys, my Instagram's so wet, the podcast is so wet, so dry. I talk about sex and relationships. I was a stripper. My name's Fiji. I get all of that is sexual, but like it opens that like, door.
To them,
and even if it didn't, like, even if my name was Shrub, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, you already anticipate the way that men sexualize everything, or see you as too emotional, or see you as like something they need to break down and make you submit to them, or like whatever. We're gonna talk about it more. But yeah, this woman is usually seen as some sort of mystery. She's like one-dimensional, right? She has this look in her eyes where it's like she could be daydreaming, but she could be fantasizing, but like she could not know you're there, but like she's like awaiting like a man to come to her, or she's invisible. Like, you know, she's just a prop in the scene. Yeah. Or she's waiting to be conquered, or she's like frozen in time. She's usually sexual. All of those things. So let's talk about this nude girl on
Can I just say too, like this whole Renaissance era of like the women being seen, like I like think that these paintings are like, I don't think the male gaze is beautiful, but I think these paintings are so beautiful, and like what I like to pretend is like actually like the woman in the photo like knows what's up. Yes. And like she actually has power, guys.
Yes.
Like, I don't like to look at it like this. However, I think it's extremely important. And like, I do feel like this is how you learn about the male gaze. Like, I remember this all in Emerson. Like, we've had, this is when I was like, okay, like the 3 different parts and like all of that. Like, I really was starting to get it.
Yeah.
But so I think it's important to know where it comes from. And like maybe she was like she knew, or she's not real, or whatever. But it's like it does represent something that we need to learn about. But for me personally, like engaging with art right now in my 26-year-old like body, I'm like, I'm gonna choose that like she's actually like the director.
And that is something that I wanted to talk about throughout this, because we're gonna bring it to the modern era too. And I think you and I have a unique perspective as women who have profited off of sexualizing ourselves for a male gaze, having been like strippers and sex workers in the past, because I feel the exact same way. Like when I look at this art, like I'm like, okay, clocking the male gaze, but like that is what makes it in a strange way beautiful to me, because she's standing there in the power.
Yes.
Like knowing, and I feel like what fucks me up about when we talk about the male gaze is that like, okay, we're talking about the male gaze, and we are again still talking about the woman as object, because we are not acknowledging like her humanness in this.
Right.
And the fact that she exists and her emotions, like we're not acknowledging.
Or like seeing her for real.
And we're acting like she isn't aware of
it.
Or whatever. Like she's not human even.
Yeah. And it's like, to a degree, I'm like, maybe it's like they're trying to say this, like, this is what the man wanted. This is how the man sees her. But it's like, in like feminist theory and like in conversations as women, it's like, why do we have to like talk about it like that too? Like, we're still not even centering her in like some sort of dialogue about changing the system or whatever. Like, that's crazy.
Do we not know that she knows that they're looking at her like that? Like, she knows and we know. So it's almost like, you know, like, that's what makes it beautiful, is that, like, she's clocking this, we're clocking this, like, I don't know.
And it's like, it's like, of course, like, to a degree, it's like, yes, I do think, like, our past and, like, sex work, like, plays a huge role into that. But, like, I feel like I would have felt that way even if I didn't. Like, I just feel like I would, So, okay, let's look at them. But I honestly think, I was, like, scared to say it, but I was like, damn, like, not this being my, like, favorite fucking era. Like,
Yes.
I just, like, really do like it. And I do think to a degree it's like I've romanticized and glamorized it a little bit more. Because this is some real shit. Like, at the end of the day, like men really were objectifying the fuck out of these women in this art and all of that. But it's like, that's what, like, they were doing. And it's like, as a viewer, I just want to, like, choose to look at it differently. Because
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. So,
Well, and it's also in a strange way, if we're talking about male validation too, it's like, okay, you can look at it from the male gaze. You can look at it as a woman connecting with a woman who is experiencing the male gaze. And then you can also look at it as a woman
right.
looking at a woman who has achieved the peak of the male gaze.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So it's almost like an ideal, which I feel like is a lot of beauty standards and stuff like that when we look at models and like
Right.
Megan Fox, who we're going to talk about.
Like when I was up on stage at the strip club with the lights on me glistening, like whatever, and like these men are like fucking like weird and gross looking, like looking up at me, like, yeah, you could look at it like, damn, like from their perspective, like what's happening. But from me, it's like I felt so good. But it's like
Yeah.
people are so blind to even like have that be a consideration. Like, of course
Right.
she's not good. Of course she's being, you know? So
And
yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's taking away women's agency and like victimizing them in a situation where it's like, if a woman is at all in the center of a bunch of men, then she must be more powerless.
Right.
And the men are powerful when in
It's
reality,
like, I
she's
don't
more
see it that
powerful.
way at
Like,
all.
you're painting me, bitch. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
the
So
painting
it's like,
wouldn't be, what is it, a fucking couch without this girl laying on it? Like, why is the painting so famous? It's not because of Hasha Wishawa or like the whatever type of guy that like painted it. Like, it's of the
Bro,
fucking
it's
bitch.
because of the woman on the panther
Yeah.
skin. So we have this woman on the panther skin and nude girl on panther skin by Felix Trutel.
Yeah, like what I said.
And she's being watched by a disproportionately large male face at the window of her bedroom. So she's being like peeked on. And then obviously there's the man who painted it. And then there's like, pretend I'm a man looking at the painting. But one thing that I also love about this era is like the body standard, and I think that's
Thank
why
you.
it's beautiful too. Because
you.
it's like it's not like the heroin chic, super skinny, you don't have rolls, you don't have fat, like anything. Like she's lounging in a position that like today, if we took a picture
Yeah.
of a woman in that position, we would be like, oh my God, like she needs plastic surgery or something like that. Like traditional like beauty standards, like you don't, but like
No,
how, like,
that's why I made that, because you're right. Like, that is literally, and that is something that I love that so
Yeah.
much. Like, part of me is like, yeah, like, I hope, like, maybe we were, like, one of those girls, like, in
Right.
the past, like, maybe.
And we're going to
But
talk
do we
about what
wanna
it
do
is
that?
in the present.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have Grande Odalisque by Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingrace.
Yeah,
And this,
she's
we have a
bad.
woman, like, looking back at it, like, she's like, you gonna stick it in? But, like, I don't know. Like, but she's hot. Like, again, like,
It's beautiful.
the like, her long, like, back, her look, like, you can't really tell her expression. Like,
Yep.
it's intimate. And I think that was one of the things about the male gaze, too. It's usually in a moment of intimacy that, like, you don't have access to, or it makes the male viewer like imagine this moment of intimacy. It's almost like early pornography or something like that. But like, to me, I don't know, it's also like, it's also romantic and intimate and like all of those things. I think the problem with it though too is that we don't have much art about like men in these images. It's always like women, like naked, bare skin, like, you know, I don't know.
Right. I know. And that's where like my feminism lags, because I'm like, I don't want to see that shit. But like the male body is beautiful.
Yes.
And I do believe that. Like I have a brother, like whatever, but like, no, just meaning like I don't hate men and think they're like ugly creatures, but like I used to. And now I'm like learning like whatever, but because I'm like, who wants to see that?
Yeah.
But we should.
I think you could, like, I've had male partners in the past where I'm like, your body is like beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
even
you're
when we're
right,
talking
you're
about,
right.
Like, last week in our episode about like the messiness of sex and the
Yeah,
little like
yes.
subtle touches and like whatever, like a man's body, like in a moment of intimacy like this, like I can think of how it would be beautiful to display a man like lying on in the bed.
No, you're
way.
right. Yeah, I'm working
You know what
on
I'm
it.
saying?
Yes.
Okay.
I
All
do.
right. Next, we have your favorite, The birth
But now
of
I'm like,
Venus.
she has abs, bro. Like, I didn't see that before.
Oh, yeah, she does have abs. The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli. And to me, I don't know. But, like, you see how there's these little, like, this little angel dude that's, like, rescuing. Is that a woman? Or
Yeah,
is
that
another
other
man?
woman. And it's like that woman trying to cover her with a blanket.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought was hot about it, too. Because you have a woman trying to cover her. You almost have this other man, like, going to, like, capture her, save her sort of thing. But she's just like, fuck you all. I'm looking, like, straight ahead.
And she
I'm
has
unbothered.
that like dazed look on her, just like all the
Yeah.
other ones have. It's like that one expression. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just like, I've liked this for a while. Like, I love, the seashell and like her hair is long. Like, it's pretty surface level.
Yeah.
But like looking at it now and like trying to analyze it, like, yeah, I think she definitely is trying to cover her up because like she's
Yup.
not naked. Those other two bitches are like, but
Yup.
I really like the like dazed look. And you know what's so interesting is like we've talked about in a lot of films, like they portray sex workers as having that exact same look and like
Yup.
not really showing as much emotion. So it's like,
Because you can project onto her. Right?
And she needs to just be whoever you want her to be.
Right. And it's so interesting because it's like, again, like this is art. It's meant to be interpreted. It's meant to be consumed. And that's like different than like a human being, but it still is like how we talk about gender and like all of that stuff. But the next one is more of the idea of like women as props or women as like figures of the background. And like you've got the two naked women and then these two guys just conducting business. It very much reminds
is she
me.
naked, babe? It looks like she's wearing a dress.
The one in the back?
Yeah, is she?
Yeah, maybe like a see-through dress. But
Right.
like this is giving like olden time strip club. Like these
But
are
like
the little sex
low-key,
workers.
the woman that's like naked towards the front, like why does she look so like chill? Like she's like relaxed.
No, to me, she looks powerful.
Right.
And that's,
Like she's
how
like,
you-
this is good.
Because it's like they're talking and she's like looking, and it's like, okay, she could be looking at a male viewer and that's supposed to be like sexual or whatever because she's like, oh, I'm with these men, but I'm looking at you. But to me, as a female consumer of this art, I'm looking at her like, yeah, bitch, I know you're getting money right
And
now.
like I want to be her.
Right.
Like, and even if she isn't getting money, it's just like we're all like we're in the grass, like I'm just like naked and like chill. Like look at the way her body is. Like she doesn't give a fuck. Like she's like
chilling.
I'm here. Wow, this is interesting.
But then it's also the idea of like her being like submissive or powerless or whatever because she's naked and they're clothed. But like it's
But
again
we don't
how
see
we
it
look
that
at
way.
power.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so different because it's like, yeah, exactly. Like, and some people might think of us interpreting it in this way as like, oh, well, then we must just prioritize male validation.
No, they'll
is the
think
most
that?
beautiful. Yeah, because like the whole argument is right. Like
Right.
this is how men see women. So if we find that attractive, then we are also consuming women from a male gaze.
I'm back with you.
Yeah.
And I think that I feel a lot of shame about that. That's
I
why I
do
was nervous
too.
to say that this shit was beautiful to me and like turns me on. But I'm also like, I don't know. Like, and I don't want, like, if I was with a friend, for example, they viewed this was like, oh my gosh, like that like makes me uncomfortable, whatever. Like I would just be like this is all just a projection of how we feel, how we look at this art.
Yeah.
So people that are gonna say that, like that's them though. Because like trust me, like I can clock when I'm being like that. And like right now I'm so like
it's not a bad thing.
It's
and
not.
That's how I feel. And I feel like I want other women to feel the same way that we feel because,
But
like, to
also
me, it's an
accept
empowering
them.
feel.
Right.
And it's not to ignore the fact that the male gaze can be extremely toxic and bad and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just of the mindset that the male gaze isn't fucking going away. You're not removing the fact that men are, like, we can grow from it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but men are always going to sexualize us. Like, straight heterosexual men are always going to do that. Like, we sexualize that. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't want to choose to be like victimized by it or like make me less powerful. I want to like capitalize off of the way I can get power from it.
And I do think like we see ourselves in art. Like honestly, it really is like how you feel about something is like a reflection on like what you're going through and like what it did to your mind. So I think it's all fine and good, like however people want to take it in. But like, I do wish like people were louder about what we're saying, because you do never really hear that. And I think that's why like I feel shame about it, because I'm like we should hate this or whatever. But I really don't hate it like at all. And like it honestly, like I like love it, bro. Like I'm so sorry. Not the male gaze, but like what we're able to like get from this painting, and
but
like
as
how
women acknowledging the male gaze and acknowledging the woman in the like the multi-layered
because like yes, we're all
yeah.
like male gaze. It's like, and we're also like male centered. So it's like, of course, we're only focusing on that. But it's like, did anyone stop to think like another alternative, or like what that woman was like really thinking? Because it's like, no, we're still prioritizing the male gaze within like trying to break it down. So it's like, damn, bitch, like no one's being creative and like having another thought
and transcending the male gaze,
and that's what
to
Mel
then
Lux
an
wants us to
overpowering
do.
female gaze.
Right.
Exactly. So lastly, we have this like, I don't know, like pop art cartoon style ish piece called Crying Girl by Roy Lichtenstein. And this is just like, you know, a pretty blonde woman crying, but she still looks cute and pretty. And it just shows like women are emotional, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, we cry too much, but we're still pretty when we do it. Like,
and I've shared this before, but I literally, when I was little, I used to think I looked so good when I was teary-eyed.
you would take the
and I would
pictures.
Like go in the mirror and like fucking model in front of it, like literally. And there's like been a recent TikTok trend like recently about like girls crying and how it's like cunt or whatever. I don't know. So yeah.
But
two ways of looking at it.
Right, because you can look at it as empowering, as like men don't want us to show our emotions.
Yeah,
I mean, the way that this girl's crying in this, like arguably, like who really cries like in a pretty way? I mean, maybe you say you cry pretty, so like maybe I cry
sometimes.
Ugly.
No, like when I'm like really crying, like and I'm talking to someone, I don't look good. But it's when you're just like tearful and you're just like it's like Vogue, yeah. But yeah, I just feel like this shit is all so related to sex work, like especially because like one of the biggest motivators for me doing it was like to like fuck men or whatever, like
reclaim your shit.
Yes, that is what I meant.
To be the woman in the painting and give her a voice and agency and all of that.
That
stuff.
is literally why like we wanted to do it with you too, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah, exactly. So more with this male gaze art, it kind of like imagines women having this like sometimes false sense of worship, like other men like worshiping the ground she walks on, but like only in the category of like sexual stuff, which I feel like we can relate to more. Like it's like the like idealized beauty, but then like they're not worshiping her mind or anything like that.
Right.
And then again, like women as props, women as emotional, the idealized setting of intimacy, this like secret moment that you have with her, like the fantasy. And we talked a lot about how this makes us feel, so I don't really have to get into that anymore. And we talked about how it makes us feel good sometimes. But next I want to get into the modern male gaze. And also another thing before we get into that, like one thing that I thought of was like the male gaze is also like, have you ever had like a man you've been dating take a picture of you and either post it or like have it in his phone like it's the best fucking picture of you and
ugly.
it's the ugliest picture?
Yeah. Yes.
And that makes me think like it's like, okay, like the male gaze can be cute sometimes because you find beauty in me when I think I look insane. So it's like it depends on the relationship between the woman and the man.
Yeah. It's really just happened to me. And I'm just like, I literally would look at him and be like, why the fuck would you take that picture of me?
Yes.
Like of me like getting ready one particular, I was sitting down like, and it was a horrible angle. And he literally thought, he was like, look at what I took of you. Like look
art.
at this is so cool. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
That
so
was
that's
like
really
my
sweet.
ex, because he would style me and take all these pictures of me and I would be like, babe, I look insane. But in some ways it helped me, like you said, find beauty in yourself from different angles and whatever, because like he found it and I'm like, that is the male validation that I needed to look at myself.
This is a male.
You know, like, okay, like we are
if you
validated.
say so, sir.
Right,
Whatever you say.
like, yes, daddy. But next I want to get into the modern male gaze a little bit.
A little bit scarier.
Yeah. So first, the one that kept coming up in all these articles was Megan Fox in Transformers. this is her, you know, leaning over the car, like, and it sucks for someone like Megan Fox, and even in Jennifer's Body and stuff like that, which is really a feminist film about how she was so sexualized and like everything. But
And,
like again,
gay.
I find her hot, iconic.
Oh, she looks
like,
so good. Yeah.
But we like demonize it in a weird way too, because
totally.
we're like, oh,
It's
the men are
fuck
jerking
her.
off to
Like,
this.
she's
Like,
perfect.
right.
Yeah. Oh my God.
then-
And like her in the movie with Lindsay Lohan, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen. Do you
I
remember
haven't
that?
seen that in forever, like enough to remember it.
Oh,
and Lindsay
my God.
Lohan too, like she's.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you're queer guys, like it's like
That's what I'm saying. Like, I look at it like, oh my God, like I want her to like kiss me.
yes,
Not like, yeah. And that's the weird thing. Like, it's like no, this is maybe we should cut this out, but it's like male validation. It's like what they want to see in like a sexualized way, like in a lesbian like kink space is like also like hot. Like I also that
yeah,
I don't
because it's
know.
the idea of a man watching you as
Right.
two women is
oh
a
my
kink.
God, it is a huge.
It's
kink
the
for
male
me.
gaze in the lesbian.
Like
yeah.
the male gaze is a kink for me.
Yes. Yeah. Same. Honestly, same. Yeah. So
Anyways.
next we have, and you guys can already think about it. Like there's all this stuff going around right now about like Gooner Instagram, like how there's so much sexual content on Instagram, all the Instagram baddies. Obviously, we also have the Bop House. We have Sophie Rain and Ari Katsayu. I don't know how to say her name, but I am like obsessed with her. Like in the
Wait,
same way
which
where
one is she in this picture?
she's
with
the one
Santa
in the
hat?
mirror with the abs. Like this is not the best picture of her, but she usually has freckles and she has like really pretty eyes. I think she's so hot, but she's also bi, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, but like her content and a lot of the girls in the Bob House's content, I think it's because again, like they're women making porn for the male gaze, but they also have like personality and agency and talk about how much money they make and all this stuff too. So it's like the modern version of that where it's
Right.
like almost for the female gaze
Yeah.
too, which we're gonna define
And like
later. But
honestly, like when I had my OnlyFans, I would because I would do solo content too. Like I would literally like perform for the male gaze, which is like crazy because like the choices I made, and it's like
yes,
that is what they're doing, and it's like a lot of people demonize them and look at them as like quote unquote whores, but like for me, like it's like not like a guilty pleasure, like I'm not ashamed of it, but like I eat up like Sophie Rain's content on Snapchat specifically, because I don't go on Snapchat, but like she's all over that bitch, and like I downloaded it to whatever. It doesn't matter. It wasn't for her, but now that I'm there, I eat up her content, and like it does turn me on in like a weird way, like the way she does it, and also it's like empowering. And I'm like, go her, but she's
That's
also
me
like
with
young.
Ari.
Some of those bitches are like young,
yeah,
and it's like their virginity is like a huge topic of discussion. Like it's like wild and it's so layered. But yeah, at the end of the day, again, I think we look at it differently because of like our views, like not even just experiences, like views and experiences. Like I don't know.
We can
but
relate, and that's it too. Because like Ari, I like, and even Camilla and like Sophie Rain, like I love how they're messy with it, and they're like, yeah, we're bops, like, and they're performing for the male gaze, but they're also cooking with Kaya, but like they're also like they letting you know they have the power in it too. Like they have personalities, like they have the silly TikToks where they're just like dancing and shaking their ass in their little outfits, like. But they also have like the added layer. But next, I want to bring us into some intersectionality, and we're going to talk about the white gaze a little bit. So Toni Morrison came up with the idea of the white gaze. You know, as Black people or people of color, you have like a white person in your head who's always like perceiving it. Or when you create art in the world, you're always thinking about a white audience because that was like the predominant culture in America. And we have this article from Tracy Michael Lewis Gidgets, who's a writer and educator, and she's the author of 13 books and numerous articles and the host of a podcast. And she is talking, it's called I Reject the Imaginary White Man Judging My Work, How I'm Turning to Black Writers as Inspiration for Resisting White Expectations. So like, again, we have the male gaze. Now we're getting intersectional. We have the white gaze, and this is a Black woman talking about her experiences. So I'm just going to read the article a little bit quick, and then we're going to talk about it. So she says, it felt like someone was standing over my shoulder. The presence was palpable, so much so that I physically kept turning around even though I knew I'd find no one standing there. When I turned back to my laptop to finish the personal essay I'd been working on for about 2 months, the sinking feeling that someone was watching and judging me returned. That voice in my head repeated the questions I kept trying to push back. What will they think? Will it sell, and to whom? Will these words activate the DEFCON level of racist trolldom I've seen other writers endure? These inquiries felt detached from my personal intentions, and yet they still pummeled on me. They were interrogated somehow into my being, even as they unraveled me emotionally. They distracted me from the questions that should have been most important at the time. What did I really want to say in this essay? How will I best show confrontation in my story? What does dignity look like when disrespect has been enacted against it? And why is dignity necessary in this particular telling? What is dignity anyway? Inevitably, as one can see here, questions like these led me outside of myself. Who defines what it means to be dignified in American culture? How has dignity and respectability been defined for Black folks, and how should that show up in our art? These questions take me outside my lived experiences as a Black woman raised in the South and living on the East Coast, a mother wrestling with all things moms do, a person with a story to tell that might be more unique than universal. They led me into the realm of perception and how said perceptions potentially affect the way I tell my story and where it will ultimately be read. That led me to the white gaze. And then she says, Toni Morrison once said, what I'm interested in is writing without the gaze, without the white gaze. In so many earlier books by African American writers, particularly men, I felt like they were not writing to me. But what interested me was the African American experience throughout whichever time I spoke of. And then she says, what I gather from the godmother of literature is that it doesn't matter only that I'm a Black woman telling my story. What matters is the lens through which I'm telling it. And sometimes, many times, that lens, if we're not careful, can be tainted by the ever-present consciousness of whiteness as the default, whiteness as the gatekeeper, whiteness as the dominant narrative, even in stories where all the players are Black. So, like, this is just to think about, like, it has to be intersectional, right? Because, like, Black women deal with it on a whole different level. They have the male gaze, and it can be a Black male gaze, but then they also have the white male gaze, the heterosexual gaze, like, etc. And I think it's not, like, with the male gaze, it's a lot of, like, sexualizing of identities and politicizing as well, because, like, again, like, women are seen as objects or, like, props. But, like, with the white gaze, it's even more politicizing it and, like, depowering it, like I don't know, dehumanizing it, exactly. And kind of the, like, Toni Morrison was told, I read some other articles that, like, okay, like, this is great, but you can't only write about Black people. Like, when are you going to write about, like, white people and stuff like that? And you would never tell an Irish writer to do that. Like, you would never tell, like, a Southern white writer to do that. It's just, like, the idea that this is, like, a niche audience that you need to appeal to.
Right.
Or that you are appealing to, and you need to appeal to the predominant because the predominant is always white.
Right.
So I thought this was a really interesting conversation. And then also, I really like the conversation about, like, what it means to be dignified. And I think it's, like, again, like, we are white people consuming this essay by this Black woman. So I also want to acknowledge that we are being the white gaze in this situation. So it's like we are like we got multiple different gazes going on.
Yeah.
But the intersections between stuff, like when we talk about dignity, like that made me think a lot about like sex work, like being like a sex worker and like being like inherently undignified.
Right.
You know? So
yeah, and it's like race is like a whole other new level than that. It's like, yeah, we have to talk about like whiteness when we talk about the male gaze, and like I think it's so real of you to say that, like, we are essentially the white gaze too, though. Like, we are that, and we can, like, sit here and, like, analyze it, but it's, like, we also are that. But I really like, too, like, the whole thing about, like, how being perceived, like, distracts you from, like, the real art that you need to be making. Like, that really stood out to me, because it's, like, and yeah, it's like identities matter. Like, no matter like who you are in the world and what your identities are, it's like that's what you're going to take in as the art. And like we only have like the white women, queer, sex work, like that's it. But there's so many other ones. It's like even if you like think about ableism too, it's like an ableist fucking gaze, like that's so it's a lot, yes. But I ultimately think, like, with the creativity thing, it's like I really do think it is distracting for us, and we're not able to, like, unlock that true creativity that we have within us because of how we're going to be perceived. And, like, as women, and also, like, for Black and brown people in this country, like, it's like you can't block that out. It's, like, nearly impossible. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, because especially like you said, like it's the intersectionality of it, because you can have multiple different gazes that you're competing with. Like we do, like as women, and then as sex workers, queer women, whatever. But it's then if you're a black woman, you have an extra layer, and then if you're lower class, or like you have, or if you're an immigrant, like you have all these different like competing lenses. But I also really liked what she said about like being intentional about like the way, what gaze you're writing it from, and kind of like removing that gaze in your head, like how Toni Morrison said, like removing like the white gaze in their own head to write the story in the way that they would write it, not in the way that they want it to be consumed.
Right.
And I think that is definitely something to consider, just like when we're making our own art, is that like sometimes we can or operate in the world like for male validation or whatever other outside validation is, like, am I acting in like how the real me wants to be, or in the way that I'm socialized that other people will interpret me? Because like sometimes it's like, fuck how they're gonna interpret it, they're gonna interpret it wrong.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, why not just do it how I would say it, and not in a way that's more palpable for them?
Right. And I think the art is the most powerful when people are able to like block it out and just like do it from how they want to and not how it's going to be perceived. Like, because it does happen. It is possible to do that, but it's really, really hard.
Yeah. So the next thing that I want us to get into, which is kind of like bringing us into figuring out this question of the fucking episode. What is the female gaze, and like how we see ourselves, and like how we should be operating and all of that? And I don't think anyone can really say what the female gaze is, which is really difficult because it's kind of that identity crisis. Like, do we know ourselves outside of the male gaze? Like, I don't know if we do. And someone posted this on Reddit and said, what exactly is the female gaze? I still don't fully get it. Every woman has a different opinion, it seems. Everyone's different. I'm shocked. Haha. If my goal is to become more appealing to women or the female gaze, whatever, what exactly should I be focusing on? And then like some stuff in the Reddit post like talks about like, oh, like androgynous men, like men's hands, or like them playing with kids. Like the female gaze is focusing on how things make you feel versus how they look and all of that. But then it's like, again, like that's a female heterosexual gaze. What if we're talking about a female queer gaze? What if we're talking about a black lesbian female gaze? Like there's different layers. And so that kind of like brought me to like, okay, so are we seeing everything too much in like a gender binary? Because again, that TikTok trend where it's like female gaze makeup versus like male gaze makeup, which is like, okay, God. I get it. Because sometimes you see it and you're like, okay, valid. Like I would think that girl's hot versus I would think that girl's pretty, but like I don't want to fuck her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I feel like when I learned like what the female gaze was like at Emerson, like where we went to college, it was just like, was it made by a woman? Yup. But it's like, that's not like enough though, because it's like, was the woman like, what were her views though? Because it's like, we have internalized misogyny too. Like, I don't know. So it's like, that's not enough. And I think it's really interesting that you can pinpoint what the male gaze is like so easily, because it's like men are like simple, whatever. But like women are so complicated. So it's like we have like, well, who knows? Because we're all so different, which is so true. Like there's so many like intersections.
So this one little part of this other article called in 2025, should male validation matter to you, from Elle India. And I kind of like this article. I thought it had like a good take, but the beginning of the article, like I'm just going to kind of summarize. They said, when was the last time you looked in the mirror and truly thought, I look beautiful? Perhaps it was this morning, a fleeting thought, quickly dismissed, been there, done that. Or maybe it was a few days ago. The last time someone, likely a man, offered you the sought-after words, you look great. For many women, this moment of self-recognition doesn't come naturally. Society shaped over by the male gaze often teaches us that beauty is something validated externally rather than felt internally. For generations, women have been conditioned to tie their worth, especially their physical appeal to outside approval. Often taught to walk on eggshells because if you feel pretty, don't boast it. There have been times when compliments have felt shallow. You wonder, do they really see you in that lens, or is your anxiety making making you not look past your insecurity. I used to be one of those women, maybe I still am. Unlearning is a slow process. A few weeks ago, I caught myself yearning for someone's approval and an admiring glance, a compliment, a crumb of validation to feel seen, or maybe I was just chasing after some sort of validation to heal my wound about never getting picked in the past. Yeah, what worse can happen to me? Guys not lining up to date me. And then she goes on to talk about, and then she gives examples of the female gaze as like Fleabag and I May Destroy You, which I would argue are the female gaze if I could define it at all, because they're very like raw women narratives that show women as whole people. Right. And I think that, but it's like, I guess that's
still
it.
Nuanced. Yeah.
Like
I used to just think it was literally just as simple as like if a woman made it, because like she's telling the story like through her woman perspective, so it has to be female gaze, like whatever. But like now as this conversation's going on, like it does matter like who's consuming it too. Like I think it can be swayed like depending on who's consuming the art. But like, yeah, maybe it was a female gaze. But this just reminded me too of like when you're like out and you like think you look so good and like you're like looking at this person, you're like, oh my God, like they should definitely want to fuck me. I look so good right now. And then they like look away and it's like, oh shit. And then you like, you know, like it's like when you want to get hit on and like objectified in a weird way. But then once it happens, you're like, ew, actually never mind. But you like almost like if that doesn't happen, it's like, okay, then like what's going on?
Right. It's like the craving, because that's what I'm thinking. Like even
and that's not a bad thing. Like I know I sound crazy, but like it's okay to like dabble in it. Like we don't need to like demonize male validation completely. Yeah, but it can't be your whole world.
Because it's like very real to crave male validation. But I also think as a queer person, it's very real to crave female validation from like a partner you're interested in.
Yeah, and it's like as a queer person though, like female validation feels a lot different than like male validation does. Like but there still is that like because of like how gender is in the society, like you can't ignore that. And like it feels just as good. It's like, oh my God, this person thinks like whatever. But when it's a man, it just is a little bit different. And like especially someone that like has daddy issues and doesn't have a lot of men to look up to, like it means like and not when a man's like, oh shit, like that ass, but like if someone's like, you know what, like talking to me and they're like, you're so smart, or like you really are, like whatever, like I'm like, oh my God, like thank you. So real quick, if you guys like the things we're saying, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube, you follow us on Spotify and Apple. You can also please rate us. We would love to get more ratings, honest reviews of what you guys think. And you can also follow us on Instagram to stay updated about future episodes. We post polls in advance every week for new episodes that are coming out. So make sure you're following us on Instagram and just on all platforms like TikTok at So Wet So Dry. The O's are zeros.
So now that we know more about the male gaze, I want to get us a little bit into the myth of male validation. And I found this Reddit post from our Ask Women Over 30, where like younger women ask older women questions. And this woman was pretty much just saying, how did you stop living for validation from men? And she just says like, you know, at 24 years old, she finds herself struggling, seeking validation from men. Like society has it ingrained in us. I find myself constantly worrying if I look good enough, if I'm pretty enough, if I'm skinny enough, interesting enough, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of the responses said, like, honestly, it just happens with time. Like, for me, I, like, neglected it. And then, like, eventually, like, relationships taught me more. Someone else said, like, you realize that male validation really isn't that great. Like, they're easy to impress. Like, they're not that smart.
True.
And then one that I really liked that led me to Audre Lorde, this woman said, eventually you date every type that you thought you wanted to date and realize that none of them are magic and some are downright horrifying. Eventually you realize the erotic energy in the Audre Lorde sense, not just sex and magic, came from within you all along. I used to go for men who were so intense and believed so strongly in things. I realized that what I really wanted was that conviction and dedication in my own self and passions, which I had to some degree, but was still looking outwardly for that validation to complete me. I've gotten that validation. It doesn't really change things. And then she said she like fell in love with herself in her 30s, and it has been the best thing ever, not just for herself, but for her dreams and passions. And so I love the essay, Uses of the Erotic by Audre Lorde, and we're going to read a little bit from that.
Nice.
And we're going to reconnect us to our, like, sexual energy and finding that, like, creative female spirit. Again, female, like, I don't know.
I know.
We're just using that term a lot right now.
But honestly, it's like, what? Like, let's not demonize female. It's like the reason we hate it is because stupid men that are like, oh, these females, blah, blah, blah. So, like,
and
that.
But then I also start to think, is it, like, not inclusive for, like, trans people or whatever, because female is like your genitalia and like it's like,
I don't know. Like, it can be like, I would love
Right.
to live in a world where it is, but exactly, it's like all the, like the word itself is like, oh my god, just like feminist, like what even is that word at this point? I don't fucking know.
We need new words, new language.
Right.
And just so you guys know, also, like, with this essay, like, I'm not reading the whole thing, so some things are out of order. Just keep that in mind, but it's linked in our sources if you want to read the whole essay. But she says the very word erotic comes from the Greek word eros, the personification of love in all its aspects, born of chaos and personifying creative power and harmony. When I speak of the erotic, then I speak of its assertion of the life force of women, of that creative energy empowered, the knowledge and use of which we are now reclaiming in our language, our history, our dancing, our love, our work, our lives. She says the erotic has often been misnamed by men and used against women. It has been made into the confused, the trivial, the psychotic, the plasticized sensation. For this reason, we have often turned away from the exploration and consideration of the erotic as a source of power and information, confusing it with its opposite, the pornographic. But pornography is a direct denial of the power of the erotic, for it represents the suppression of true feeling. Pornography emphasizes sensation without feeling. And I do want to say, during this, like, point in feminist times, Audre Lorde was on the anti-pornography, anti-sex work camp of things.
Right.
Which makes me have a complicated relationship with her, because I love Audre Lorde, but I strongly disagree with that. And I found an essay. It's really long, but it's really good, guys. And I'm going to link it in the sources that goes into more of how to have, like, we can still love Audre Lorde. She's a fucking human. And take a lot of what she says while also disagreeing with some of what she says. So I just want to put that in here and go read the essay if you're interested in learning more. But going on, she says, of course, women so empowered are dangerous. So we are taught to separate the erotic demand from most vital areas of our lives other than sex. And the lack of concern for the erotic root and satisfactions of our work is felt in our dissatisfaction from so much of what we do. For instance, how often do we truly love our work even at its most difficult? And then she goes on to say, like, you know, the principal horror of any system is defining things in terms of profit rather in terms of, like, human need. And then she says, like, it's essentially like blinding a painter and telling them to improve their work and to enjoy the act of painting. It's not possible, and it's also cruel. And then she goes on to define the erotic. So she said, the erotic functions for me in several ways.
Oh, this literally gives me chills. Like, I feel like I have this quote low-key memorized.
Yes, I
like
love
this part
one.
Specifically. Yeah. Okay,
Eats, because it's like that. We never
Like,
look at it like this. To me, like, I think this is kind of female gaze. We don't really know what it is, but, like,
oh my
this
god, it so
helps
is.
for me.
And it's like literally like sounds so corny because of the class we took, but like this, like now, like that I'm like more like I've grown up since like college. It's like this is like revolutionary thought because nobody else was talking about it like this. And like I knew that, but it's just like, and that's what like honestly like we try to do is like talk about things in a new way. Like, and we might be wrong sometimes and like whatever. Like not like we're never gonna be Audre Lorde. I know that, but it's like learning and like practicing those same things that she did perfectly. So
right, and of course, like she's a Black lesbian feminist, so like this is a unique view because like obviously she's not coming at it from like a male gaze. She's decentered the man in her mind, like the white gaze in her mind, and she's looking at it outside of that view, which is what we aim to do and
every day. Yeah,
our everything exactly. So she says, the erotic functions for me in several ways, and the first is in providing the power which comes from sharing deeply any pursuit with another person. The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them, and lessens the threat of their difference. Another important way in which the erotic connection functions is the open and fearless underlying of my capacity for joy, and the way my body stretches to music music and opens into response, hearkening to its deepest rhythms, so every level upon which I sense also opens up to the erotically satisfying experience, whether it is dancing, building a bookcase, writing a poem, examining an idea. That self-connection shared is a measure of the joy which I know myself to be capable of feeling, a reminder of my capacity for feeling, and the deep and irreplaceable knowledge of our capacity for joy comes to demand from all of my life that it is to be lived within the knowledge that such satisfaction is possible and does not have to be called marriage, nor God, nor an afterlife. This is one reason why the erotic is so feared and so often relegated to the bedroom alone, when it is recognized at all. For once we begin to feel deeply all aspects of our lives, we begin to demand from ourselves and from our life pursuits that the I feel in accordance with that joy which we know ourselves to be capable of. Our erotic knowledge empowers us, becomes a lens through which we scrutinize all aspects of our existence, forcing us to evaluate those aspects honestly in terms of their relative meaning within our culture. And this is a grave responsibility, projected from within each of us, not to settle for the convenient, the shoddy, the conventionally expected, nor the merely safe. We have been raised to fear the yes within ourselves, our deepest cravings, but once recognized, those which do not enhance our future lose their power and can be altered. The fear of our desires keeps them suspect and indiscriminately powerful, for to suppress any truth is to give it strength beyond endurance. The fear that we cannot grow beyond whatever distortion we may find within ourselves keeps us docile and loyal and obedient, externally defined, and leads us to accept many facets of our oppression as women. And so I know she uses a lot of big words and like different language in this, but like how the Reddit post said, like I think, and especially when we use the term erotic, right? Like as women who exist in between and among the male gaze that sexualizes us and sees us as props and all of this thing, and then you add an extra layer to you being queer, you being black, and all of those things, and this is a black lesbian feminist, it's hard to like reclaim that like power and that creativity and that fire within yourself where you can just like move through the world and like dance and like create a bookshelf and do all of these things without someone else's eyes, because it's like seen as erotic or it's seen as fetishy or something else, like through someone else's vision. But like once you like block out all of that like noise and those eyes and you just focus on like doing it yourself, that is like the most beautiful fucking shit.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting, like thinking about male validation, creativity, and then bringing in like Audre Lorde, like uses of the erotic essay. Like honestly, how your mind was able to connect those dots continues to inspire me every single day, bitch. Because I think it's really interesting in this context specifically, because I think like male validation, it's like we center the erotic that has to do with men though. Yeah. And that's what we talk about. And like, it's a bad thing. Like we don't talk about like the good parts of the erotic and like the parts that like don't include anyone else. Like it just comes from within you. And that's what makes it connects to creativity. Because like when you're able to block everything out, like we said at the beginning, like you're able to create your most vulnerable form of art when you're not thinking about how you're going to be perceived, and you really just create it from like your own body and like your persona of like all the different identities intersecting that you have. And just the whole thing about like the fear of our desires and just like our fear to like truly be ourselves and like be creative in that way and like not be perceived, like it all just connects.
Yeah, because I feel like in all honesty, like when I am being creative, like it is from that like source energy of like using your erotic, like seeing things as beautiful, like without like when you're alone by yourself, like without other people in the room, like whatever. And then like it almost feels like intrusive or like violent or like in a weird way when like the men engage in it, because you're creating it. And again, what Toni Morrison is saying and how she has to like create without like the white gaze in her mind. She has to create from a place of like just her, but then like the white gaze is still interacting like with what she creates. And that's the unfortunate thing about being like a black person, like a woman, a queer person, whatever, is that like you that audience is always going to like interact with what you're creating or what you're producing, but you have to do it anyway, and you have to like block it out while you're doing it, and like almost also consider it at the same time.
And maybe a lot of women have felt like their like deepest desire, like their most raw, like erotic version of themselves, it's like we're scared to like show men that versions of ourselves because like we don't think that they'll accept it. So it's like rather we act in accordance to like receive that male validation. But just like what she's saying, it's like we've been raised to like fear the yes within ourselves and like all of that. So it's like that's how it connects to male validation too. It's like you like hide all of the like other parts of the erotic and like versions of that of with you to please men and appeal the male gaze. And same thing like what you were saying, it's like for people of color, it's like, yes, like the white gaze is still interacting with you. It's like, I love the show Insecure. And like, I would say like that has like, I don't know if I can even say, but I do feel like that was made like with a black gaze, like Issa Rae's like the executive producer, writer, all that stuff. And it's like, I eat it up and watch it. It's like, it's not that it's not for me, but it's like I don't even think I could take in that art the way maybe it was supposed to be.
It was
because it wasn't created with me in mind, which is a good thing. And
and exactly how you were saying, like fearing like that, like yes, like within yourself, how like Audre Lorde was saying, and again, like the first Reddit post that brought me to Audre Lorde, because one thing I really liked that woman said too was that, and this is like so fucking me, is that I used to go to men who were very intense and believed so strongly in things because like she wanted that in herself. And I feel that so fucking hard. And so like the idea of, again, like abandoning your creativity for male validation, I don't even know if it's male validation for me. It's almost just like for a man who is embodying what I want to be, because I don't think like I'm capable of it, or it's so difficult to reach that like kind of situation.
Right. That's interesting. And do you feel like if you were like, do you feel like broad statement, like you have been like, you want your partner to embody something that you want to be, or like just because it's a man, or it could be a woman too?
It could be a woman too. Definitely. Right. I think definitely. But I think I have definitely in the past prioritized like encouraging and like being there for, or like promote, like just prioritizing their sense of like intensity, creative pursuit, whatever, in fault of like minimizing my own, or not watering my own enough. Because it's like, again, like going back to the very first TikTok, it's like you're about to go meet up with a hottie, but then you remember you could be being creative. Am I just going to meet up with a creative hottie because I love how they're making music and they're designing clothes and they're being dope? And that is just like an externalization of like what I should be doing for myself.
Right.
And so that I think is like very valid.
Right.
Too.
And you've done that because that's what's normalized, you know? And then it's like you are doing the creative things like with the podcast, and it's like that's not even being recognized. So you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's like either way, it's like you're not going to be seen regardless. It's like, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like now, like my relationship to it is a lot better because I do prioritize like those things, which we did kind of ask you guys, like.
But you're single now, so you're prioritizing the art shit.
Right. So lastly, we're getting close to wrapping up, guys. And I want to talk again about the idea of like boy sober and sobriety. I've been thinking about sobriety a lot. Obviously, I'm doing dry January. I am cigarette free. And sobriety implies being like drunk off of something or having an addiction to something. You know what I'm saying? And usually when you're doing that, you're neglecting something else.
Right.
So this episode made me think about the whole term of boy sober like a little bit differently, because I'm like, okay, like if I'm so drunk on boys and male validation, then I'm like only going out and partying all the time with these boys, and then I'm not doing the podcast, or I'm painting, or I'm doing these things that feed myself in a better way.
Getting a second job, making more money.
Exactly, that type of stuff. And this article, like, you know, brought me to that idea. It's called How to Go Boy Sober When You Have a Pathological Need for Male Validation, which is very trending. And then it, again, says, you know, that it implies the possibility of being boy drunk, which symptoms are positioning romance with men as the primary focus in life, letting male validation dictate what you wear or how you act, or perhaps spending any time crafting a witty response to a man who only communicates via Instagram story reactions and does not care whether you live or die. More generally, going boy sober means intentionally stepping away from dating and sex for a period of time and creating space for platonic love, self-compassion, and growth. And like, honestly, like, I don't think that I'm the type of person who's struggled with like completely abandoning myself for male validation, so I can't really relate completely in that way, but I think a lot of women do, and so there's more,
we should hold space for them.
Right, because it's like, I totally get, for me, like, it was necessary to not drink for this month for me to be able to quit cigarettes because I have an addiction to it. Right. You know what I'm saying? But like, my addiction to like male validation, I don't think is as like predominant. So, but I do understand the importance of being celibate, going sober, like,
and when I quit this strip club, I literally felt like I was on like a sobriety journey because I wanted to go back so bad, but I knew it was bad for me. And it was like so weird. But yeah, we definitely need to hold space for women that like do feel like, oh my God. And like, even like they're obsessing over male validation. And even that TikTok in the beginning where it's like that girl fucked over her friend and they were like, oh my God, all she does is male validation, blah, blah, blah. It's like, she maybe needs to go boy sober. Like, and maybe not. Like, you can like reframe your mind and like unlearn it in other ways too. Like, it doesn't need to be that like extreme, but I do think like it definitely is a real problem. Also, it's like in this case, I do feel like privileged that I'm not just attracted to men, so it doesn't like consume me, because like my sexuality and like who I'm attracted to and like who I want to fuck like is a big part of my identity. Like, I live for that shit. So like, I fear that like if I was straight, that maybe I would have a way bigger problem with this than I do. So yeah.
And that's kind of what I was thinking with it too, because there's this TikTok that I'm not going to play, but it's like the article's like giving advice on how to go boy sober, and this girl's like, you know, you can't date, no situationships, like you're not really single. If you're texting someone, like, no, like completely like cut them out. And like, part of me, like, and again, going back to the first TikTok where the girl's like, at your grown age of 20 years old, you should be networking, you should be doing all these things.
Like,
and like,
whoa,
I think about myself.
Culture.
Yeah, like, relax. But it's like, I think about myself at like 20 years old, and like, I mean, we were stripping when we were like 19, like whatever. Like, I do think, even though I don't have a problem with it now at 26, I prioritize male validation and just meeting up with any guy. Like, when I was in London, I was meeting up with like Tinder dates and like one night stand hookups, like when I could have been going to a museum or doing this and that. And like, part of me looks back at it like, would I be further in the podcast and my art career and all of that stuff? Like, yes, maybe, but also like, I'm a fucking woman in modern society. I was like puberty hormones, like wanting to fuck.
And the art of casual sex, like last week, like
it
it's art too.
My art. Yeah, it's inspired my art. So like, I just think about like the younger women that are on TikTok, social media, YouTube, getting all of this content, telling them don't seek male validation, don't reply to text, And it's like, yes, to a point, like, don't get addicted to it. But also, like, we're fucking human. Like,
like, we are human. And it's like, that's why I always say, it's like, we shouldn't catcall. Like, that's bad. But like, sometimes if I'm in the right mood and someone catcalls me, I will engage with it and I feel fine about it. But if I'm in the wrong mood, all of a sudden you are, you know what I mean? So it's like ridiculous. But yes, overall we shouldn't catcall, but like also that, like, we're also just human beings, and like everything is so dark and deep right now. It's like, I get like people have trauma, like I do, you do, but like at the end of the day, should I really feel so bad because this old man just catcalled me and like made me feel pretty? Like, no, like it's fine.
Right, like that.
We're taking it too far. Like, everyone's like, decenter men, like, get rid of them completely, kill them, they're all fucking ugly and not worth anything. Like, no, dude, no. And I used to really think that, but it's like, when looking at male validation, it's like, we should critique it within ourselves and make sure it's in check, especially when thinking about it with creativity. Like, we need to honor that, honor the real erotic, be creative, and not be afraid of how we're going to be perceived. But also, it's okay to like male validation sometimes, engage with art that commodifies it or represents it and like it. I used that probably wrong. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like last week, it's like you don't need to be like all
Yeah,
Christian, Mormon,
doomsday.
no sex, or a complete slut fuck anyone. There is
Like,
a balance in
Love
between this
fuck.
shit.
Damn, that was hot.
Like,
that
but
you said
again,
that,
if you have an addiction and you need to get sober, I don't know.
right,
whatever,
it's
but-
all so layered, but you only see people talking about things one way today.
Yes.
And that's it. So you think you're fucking tapped if you would disagree or like whatever, but like really, I feel like we're all thinking, like, aren't you guys tired?
Yeah, are you guys relating to us right now?
Yeah, or are we actually tapped? Don't answer that. Let's continue.
Okay, lastly, we just have some polls to wrap us up, and then we can talk about what's got us wet, dry, and still confused. But first, we have, how do you feel about your relationship to male validation? And 51% of you guys said, I care less about it than I used to. 31% said I'm actively working on it. 9% said nothing wrong with it. And 9% said I crave it too much. And I feel like, again, like we said, you grow up, you crave it less because you understand yourself more, you learn yourself. You need to live you can't just be out the womb like solid.
100%.
Anyway, we asked you guys also what feeds your creativity the most. 47% of you guys said other art, books, movies, etc. 31% said alone time and peace. 16% said friends, family, social events, and only 6% said sex, intimacy, and the erotic. Which
Like,
is like,
honestly,
damn.
can I change my answer? Nah. But I said other art, books, and movies because, like, it is true. Like, I do feel like, especially, like, as a film major in college, like, movies do really inspire me. Like, stories being told, like, storytelling in general. But, like, now I'm, like, I saw sex, intimacy, and I'm just, like, at a weird place. But now it's, like, being reminded of what the erotic. Yeah, what the erotic truly is.
No
like,
one's
being
gonna think that
reminded.
in the polls. Yeah.
Right, but it's like now that we just like, you know, worked through that, a brief part of that essay again, I'm like, yeah, the erotic's inspiring as fuck because the erotic is my creativity and like inner power where like I'm not afraid of anyone to perceive me.
Yeah, I feel
But,
same. Like if we're looking at it from the
You
Audre
said
Lorde
alone
sense,
time,
same.
which
I
makes
said alone
sense,
time
'cause you're like,
it's
everyone
when
get the
no
fuck
one's
out.
around.
Yeah, like you
Bye. Like
like
the
you-
voices.
because
Like I
people are-
literally can't.
No, because people are always invading your space. Like I go to Atlanta 2 times out of the year, maybe, and bitches are on outside knocking as soon as I touch down. I'm like, damn, bitch, like she barely ate her dinner yet. Like,
there's
so
voices.
yeah.
Yeah, but
But
yeah,
I feel
and
that
I
too.
do think also, and just talking about the male gaze, the female gaze, if it is other art, books, movies, etc., that does inspire you, clock what gaze it's coming from. Consider the gazes. Consider
Yeah.
what gaze you are consuming with, because that also affects how we perceive shit. Whatever.
So
I'm not gonna go
true.
down
Clock
more of a
that
rabbit hole
gaze.
with that. And the last thing. What makes you most likely to abandon your creativity actually? And 44% of you guys said depression and mental health. 34% said work and too busy. 16% said getting in a relationship / too much time with other people. And 6% said the fear of being judged. I might change my answer. I said getting in a relationship, too much time with other people. I feel like it's really all of the above.
Bro, honestly, I feel like if I could write my own in, it's I'm lazy and I don't believe in myself. Like,
Okay,
and
I
maybe
feel like
that's like mental health. I know.
Yeah.
I know that's mental health, but like that's how I feel. I'm like, I could just do it. Like, I could really just do it. Like, just fucking do it, bitch. But I can't. Like, I just
Well,
like
don't
being
talk to
cozy
her
at
like
home.
that.
I know.
You can't just be like, just do it, bitch, when it's creating. You have to be like, I love you. You are worthy of creating this art.
And like you should do it. Like this is your purpose. Yeah, no, totally. But yeah, definitely mental health for me. Like I'm like definitely not as scared of being judged like as I used to be. Like honestly,
Same.
I'm so there. Work too busy. I truly believe you're never really too busy for that
Right.
shit. Like
There's
we don't
always
really
time.
need to sleep. Like I'm like we need to be
Okay.
in bed by this time and
Hustle
wake up
culture.
later. But like we could wake up early and like do it like 5 to 8 a.m. are hours of the day that nobody's
or what you're scrolling
I'm not
on
gonna
your
do it,
phone.
but
You
yeah,
could be
right.
You know, like there is
and then
things
getting
that
in a
you could give up.
relationship. Yeah, I'm single as fuck. So yeah.
Yeah,
But
so-
yeah, I loved that poll, by the way.
Yeah. So obviously this was a big conversation. We talked about a lot, but as we wrap up with what's got us wet, dry, and still a little bit confused, I want us to consider the male gaze, how this operates in our relationship to our own creativity, how we prioritize male validation over ourselves, and listening to that like inner yes that Audre Lorde talks about. Like if we should be going boy sober, which we kind of already talked about, and like also how you relate to this as a queer woman. So I'll give it to you first.
Okay, yeah, guys. So big concepts we're working with here. I definitely feel like I'm so wet just about looking at male validation within the context of creativity, because there's so much out there about male validation, how to stop it completely, like, you know what I mean? And it's like hating on women that like crave it. And so it's like, this is like, in that TikTok really sparked something. And I think this is like a huge important conversation, especially right now. And then moving even further to look at male validation creativity with the erotic, and like also just the male gaze, and like how that has like progressed. And honestly, I feel like at this point in my life, like my relationship to male validation is like really just like existing in like a kink space, and it like turns me on for like men to like objectify me like in my kink world. But it's just like over time, like I'm definitely proud of myself, because I really don't like walk outside and like I don't really think about men like ever. And I do think, because like I really like women and like non-binary people too. And like right now I'm like definitely in a zone where I'm like, I want a girlfriend. So I'm just like, they are so far from my mind. But at the same time, it's like my past experience as a sex worker, it's like male validation. It's like I needed to get that to get a paycheck, bitch. Like I was doing that all night and operating under the female gaze, but also feeling empowered from it. So it's just like, yeah, like I'm really wet about like not demonizing male validation. And like I'm also wet about like maybe realizing for myself, like I need to find that creativity when I'm alone and don't have a male partner to validate me, or any partner of any gender as well, because I do feel like I've really kind of just neglected that to like fixing that. Like it's like when I'm dating someone, it's like I need to be good for them. Like I want them to have a good partner, so like I need to be going to yoga and like doing art and like working hard and all this shit. But like when it's just me, I'm like, girl, you're fine. Like we don't need to do that. Like we can just hang out. Like we don't need to like do all of that. Like you can just actually like watch movies with your dog and like it shut the world out and it's fine. But it's like, so how high do you think of yourself though, Autumn? You know, so it's like I want to find that again. But I just think like I'm wet overall. Last thing, like obviously about the Audre Lorde essay, but just like I want more women to think about it this way, even if they don't agree with us. Just entertain yourself with the thought of the potential of like looking at it like this, instead of being so male focused, like this is bad, male gaze, bad, right, and not thinking about the nuances. But yeah, and just wet about the intersectionality of the whole conversation. Well done, Fiji.
Yeah. Okay, yes, thank you. I'm very wet about my relationship to male validation and creativity right now, because I honestly feel overall the most creative I felt, I think, in like my whole life, because I'm actually like seeing things out. Like I could be writing. That's the one thing that I'm not doing, that I want to get to a place too, which is like strangely the thing I'm best at. Right. I like, honestly, you sound like my dad. Okay. Like he literally, that was his like routine. But yeah, so I feel way better about my relationship to male validation now. I look back at myself and like I said, like I do think I prioritized it way more when I was younger, but I think it was a self-worth thing, because like you said, like I didn't see the value in myself or my ability to create art or be that person. I was just looking for that person in a man, or like looking to be validated by a man like sexually. But then also like I love sex and I love kink, and I'm very like into male validation in that way. So it's like it's a nuanced conversation. We don't need to hate male validation, especially as heterosexual, bisexual women, like whatever. It gets into heteropessimism territory. We don't need to talk shit on ourselves. Like the world already does that fucking enough. So
I need to get better at that.
Right. I'm what about just like growing up? Like again, thank you. Again, it's like our last episode. It's like, you know, like, it's not doomsday and it's not like whatever. You're invincible, like you said. like you can find a happy medium. You're growing up, especially if you're in your 20s, even if you're in your 30s, if you're in your fucking teens, which why are you listening to our podcast? I mean, it actually, as long as you're like 17 or older, I feel like it's fine.
Right.
You're gonna figure it out. Like you don't need to figure it out tomorrow. Like you don't need to figure it out today. Like you're working on it, and I'm wet about that concept.
Right, because there are huge systems at play that invented male validation. And our like little eeny meeny like interpersonal experiences in our everyday lives that like represent that. It's like, why are we being hard on ourselves because we used to like live for male validation when like that's what everything was telling us to do, you know? So it's just like hating on your past self. And like I said, I need to get better about this, but this is what I'm dry about. It's like we need to stop doing that. Yeah. And that's why I'm just like so happy we're like even like talking about male validation in other ways, but like associating it with creativity like feels right because like that's something we actually want to be doing. That's not centering the male or the men in the conversation. It's like emphasizing like the erotic and how like that's important to like be in tune with your creativity. Like if your validation from men is so extreme that like you're abandoning like your wants and true desires to like create certain things or just be certain things, like that's a problem. And you do need to clock that, not to give yourself shame, but just like, oh shit, like I need to wake up and like start living in my truth. Like I still feel like I need to do that too, to an extent. We all do. Like that's like human life, like long-term goals. So it's just like, I don't want to shame other women for like being addicted to male validation. I'm not just going to feel bad for them and excuse for their horrible behavior to other women or whatever. But like, I am going to hold space for them because like, that's a completely valid way to react with the system. But again, it is on us as individuals to unlearn harmful shit. So it's like, you know, it's not black or white. But yeah. And like, lastly, I'll just say dry about like that Renaissance art shit and like people being like, oh, like it's the male gaze, like she looks hella vulnerable, like she's just like whatever, and we're all just like watching her and like whatever, does she even want that, da da da. It's like we can just like put ourselves in that woman and like change the narrative so easily. So it's like, let's just do that, okay? Whatever. And
see women as like inherently powerful and not just as like victims of this, like
maybe
it's how you consume it. Yeah, exactly. No, same. I'm like completely dry about like everything exactly the way you said it. Like yes, there needs to be more accountability, but also like it reminds me again of the Lily Phillips conversation and all of that. Like we just love to kick people when they're already down and make it like a personal fault, like a personal part of your identity and you're fucking up and you're everything wrong, when it's like you are shaped by the society like around you and your experiences and like your gender and your race and all of this stuff. Like there's so much noise in this world. Like I mean, I've been thinking about that like so much lately as I'm like not out partying and I'm at my corporate job and I'm at my bartending job and then I do this podcast. Like it's around so many different spaces, so many different people with so much different noise. Like where do you find yourself amidst all of that? And all of us are like struggling with that situation. And especially as women, like I'm glad in a lot of ways that we are having broader conversations about like dissecting the male gaze, the female gaze, like our relationship to male validation. It's just unfortunate that things swing so far one way. And also like it's strangely back to being conservative while we think that we're being more progressive. It's like this weird paradox. So very dry about that.
So
and
crazy.
Then, yeah. And dry about like the misogyny of like, again, towards sex workers. It always ends up that way because the job is to get male validation in a sexual way. And like, we can't, I hate how we see the men as powerful in that when it is the women that are powerful. Like, again, wrong. Like, I don't know what gaze that is, but it's a fucked up one.
Right. And it's like two power imbalances. Like, it doesn't even need to be that like the woman's the only one in power and the man is like completely fucking weak. It's like they both have power to an extent. Like, we can just choose to look at it like that from people that have done it and said it feels that way, but you don't believe them and whatever. But I guess the biggest thing I'm confused about is like, I'm really just petrified for like the state of relationships right now, like queer, straight, whatever the fuck. Like, I just feel like it's hard right now to like be in a healthy relationship and like honor yourself and like be truthful about everything
Yes.
and just like live in your truth. And like, even if it's like the best fucking person that would like never hurt you, like it still is hard. It's like, I'm not saying I've been with monsters. Like I too can be the monster sometimes. Like I worry about myself engaging because it's like, you know, it's like I'm holding back parts of myself that maybe that person even wants to see and embrace, but I don't let myself get there because I'm like afraid of being perceived in a certain way or like whatever, just societal shit. So I'm just confused on like how do we be creative like in relationships, whether it's with a man or a fucking any other person? Like how do we do that for myself? And like I don't know. I'm scared of where this whole male validation thing is going because it just keeps getting worse. Like the hate on ourselves keeps getting worse. It's like we're going celibate. We're going boy sober. Like we hate men so much. Men are trash. Like where are we going to go from here? Like when are we going to finally going to like come up from air on these like completely opposite views? And like just like what you said of like things that are supposed to like maybe be progressive like are leaning more the other way now too. And so it's just like I'm like I do have hope like for like the world, but like I do feel like where are we going from here? Because it's just like getting worse. And like I don't blame anything on social media, but I do think like all of us being chronically online definitely plays a part into it. And like AI, like human connection. Like I'm just like, do we need to be alone to create art? Like, is it even possible right now because of all the fucking things? Like, and not to mention, like, what type of relationship is it? Like, interracial relationship? Like, I'm like, how do we, like, do this shit? Like, it's like, it feels like a lot. So.
Yeah. No, same. I think same. I'm confused about all of that because it's like exactly like in social media with all the we're having more great conversations about one facet of our identity or our own identities, but we end up in this sort of echo chamber of people who are exactly like us and then get like radicalized down this pipeline, and then we like center ourselves and we act like we're the only people with experiences, and then how are you going to get in a relationship? Because it's like or connect with other people at all, because it's like, yes, as a woman I need to decenter men in my own mind, not look for male validation, focus on my creativity, like become myself more, like all of those things. But then also being a bisexual person, I might want to get in a relationship with a man, and I also have to like consider what his perspective is, and then let him also be like Black or also bisexual or something like that. Like we need to consider other people's perspectives besides just our own. And I feel like we keep going down this road where it's like, okay, like my perspective wasn't considered in this facet of my identity, so I'm gonna double down on like everyone else is fucked up, and then we don't see the intersectionality even more, and we can't like connect. So like that whole thing is confusing because I think we take it like too fucking far. Like, yes, you need to like prioritize yourself and focus on yourself and return to yourself, but also you need to connect with other people and hold space for their feelings and be more accepting and not just like label people. And how do we do both? Because when there's perception and it's just like a whole fucking mess. And lastly, I'm confused about why the fuck Audre Lorde is anti-pornography. Like, I get it. Like, I read the essay, like, but like, it's just disappointing to me as like a feminist that I love. But like, it was a different era. It was a different time, Fiji. Like, it's fine.
I think.
But like, when it's one of your idols and stuff like that, and you're like, damn, like, she doesn't approve of like that, you're just kind of like, fuck, like it's whatever. But like that essay that I
know,
read,
that's how I feel about
really
you know who.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But again, like guys, like things don't have to be black and white. Like there's nuance. Like we're humans. We're gonna have fucking flaws. We're gonna fuck up. We're growing. We're learning. Who knows what Audre Lorde would think now if she was still alive? Maybe we could have convinced her otherwise. But we still. What she said is awesome and helps us every day. Anyway, that's the end of the episode, guys.
So yeah, that about does it for this episode, guys. Make sure that you are subscribed or followed on platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Those are the platforms we really push out. You can like the video, also drop a comment, keep the conversation going. What do you think about male validation and abandoning your creativity and all that we mentioned? You can always DM us more thoughts on Instagram at So Wet So Dry. The O's are zeros. We also post polls on there every week for upcoming episodes and give an opportunity for y'all to submit a story, have your voice heard in the episode. So make sure you're following us there too.
Yes, we also have listener support on Spotify, but it is in the bottom of the description of every single episode, no matter what platform you guys are listening on. It is 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99 a month. And we love you guys so much. We will catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
So I'm a past sex worker. I've always been really sexually liberated, pro sex work, pro sex positive, intersectional feminism. Like, I'm gonna grow armpit hair, never wear a bra again, like whatever. But now recovering from all the sex I've had that's transactional and wasn't like intimate, vulnerable, I was in love with them, I'm starting to feel like, oh no, like, is that a problem? If you guys have seen the OnlyFans to Christian Pipeline, sex work to Christian Pipeline, like, I'm like, bro.